The practice of resistance is one which continually brings subjects into an encounter with the politics of security. Political activism thereby always involves some encounter with one's status as subject, agent, or object of security. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am Loverly, and today I will present to you my paper entitled Transnational Activism and Security, the Milk Tea Alliance. So this is a qualitative study focusing on the security implication of the transnational movement brewing in Southeast Asia. It mainly asks whether transnational activism affects state security, and if yes, this research is inspired by the youth movement in Southeast Asia called the Milk Tea Alliance. While youth activism is not novel in the region, what is interesting about this Milk Tea Alliance is its structure, its ideology, and the dynamics between and among its members. In a region where non-interference of domestic affairs is the norm observed by most states, a movement or civil society like the Milk Tea Alliance is considered divergent. So this presentation is divided in three parts. First, background. Here, we will revisit the history of the Milk Tea Alliance, how it started, and what are its ideologies. We will also see the IR theory that explains the emergence of transnational activism and what contributes to its growth. Second, we will see the influence of transnational activism in state security. And finally, I will present the findings and conclusions of this study. So dissent is no stranger to Southeast Asian politics. As governments in the region ebb and flow, dissent manifested through varied forms is constantly in attendance. From the two people power revolutions in the Philippines, the 1998 youth protests in Indonesia, the 1973 student-led Thai revolution, the three major protests in Malaysia, the two student protests in Singapore. Activism and state security appears to be the opposing sides of the same coin. Common to these uprisings is that they were done by citizens against their own state or for causes endemic in their respective countries. In particular, these demonstrations were triggered by authoritarian governments, the enactment of or enforcement of repressive laws, or the rampant violation of fundamental human rights. As globalization and regional interconnectedness flourished, however, a new form of activism is emerging in the region. That is transnational activism. So what is transnational activism? Rice defined transnational activists as self-organized advocacy groups that undertake voluntary collective action across state borders in pursuit of what they deem as wider public interest. The Milk Tea Alliance is an example of transnational movement. In 2020, out of sarcasm against Chinese internet trolls, a youth movement later called Milk Tea Alliance was formed. Time defined the Milk Tea Alliance as a loose transnational network of youth who see themselves as engaged in similar fights against authoritarianism and who have mostly come of age amidst China's growing influence in the region. The alliance had its genesis in April of 2020 when Thai actor Vashirovich Shivari liked a tweet supporting Hong Kong's independence from China. To recall, Hong Kong and Taiwan's relationship with China have grown more hostile over the years. For the longest time, citizens of Hong Kong and Taiwan have been seeking independence from China. However, Beijing shows no intention of conceding to such demands. On the contrary, China's policies towards Taiwan and Hong Kong have become more aggressive in the last 4 years. Shivari's expression of support has angered many Chinese nationalists who started an onslaught of criticism against the actor and his country. Shivari's fans from Thailand, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, who found camaraderie in each other, fought back. In the process, the hashtag Milk Tea Alliance was born. The Economist narrates that the name is a reference to the milky tea drink that is drunk hot in Hong Kong, with tapioca pearls in Taiwan, and iced and sweetened in Thailand. This differs from the nip tea often drunk in China. For protesters, How they take their tea represents a common pro-democracy and anti-China feelings. Later, youth from other countries, namely Myanmar, the Philippines, Burma, Vietnam, and Cambodia, soon pledged allegiance to the movement, raising various issues ranging from the encroachment of China in the West Philippine Sea, the damming of the Mekong River, and the ongoing military coup, among others. The Milk Tea Alliance fosters transnational relations between and among citizens in Southeast Asia. Joseph Nee and Robert Keohane defined transnational relations as interactions across state boundaries that are not controlled by the central foreign policy organs of government. With regard to its creation, Erdem argued that constructivism best explains the existence of transnational activism. This IR theory acknowledges the role of individuals, social movements, and international organizations as significant agents of change in international politics. Through the lens of constructivism, he stated that actors are makers of norms and agents of change in world politics. As regards their formation, Keck and Chikink believe that there are three factors that could account for the emergence of transnational advocacy networks. First, channels between domestic groups and their governments are blocked or hampered, or where such channels are ineffective for resolving conflict. Second, activists or political entrepreneurs believe that networking will further their mission and campaigns and actively promote their networks. And finally, conferences and other forms of international contact create arenas for forming and strengthening networks. This rings true in the case of Milk Tea Alliance birth. China's overwhelming control in the governments of Hong Kong and Taiwan effectively blocks the channels for resolving and addressing the demands of their people. In the same vein, Thai activists perceive that the Prayuth government has increasingly aligned itself closer with China. These hampered domestic opportunities for conflict resolution induce local activists to bypass their governments or states and pursue transnational alternatives for reform. Proceeding to the ideology of the alliance. As previously mentioned, the alliance is born out of shared ideals for democracy. It is an anti-authoritarian movement and China's pervasive influence in the region. Despite the diversity of its membership, the alliance has a common adversary, that is China, and similar authoritarian regimes. Framing is crucial in transnational activism. Tarot defined framing as the construction of meanings and symbols in a certain interpretive way for the mobilization of social contentions. Framing an issue performs multitude of purpose. It can make a cause more comprehensible to its targeted audience, attract attention of relevant actors, and encourage action. With the hostile encroachment of China in the region, an anti-authoritarian or pro-democracy framing is not hard to sell to the members or would-be members of the alliance, despite the diversity and the malleability of identities and interests of people forming the alliance. They have found an underlying common denominator for the alliance cause. Much of the alliance popularity emanated from the growing animosity in how China deals with small states in the region. This is how the alliance framed its ideology, and the alliance's popularity is a testament of its effective framing. As of the moment, the alliance is still gaining traction. All this is possible through social media platforms. Veronica Mack, a sociology professor at Hong Kong's Suweian University, told Time that young people know that their political capital is weak because they don't have the money and that many of them have political connections, but they have found support and political resonance online. As pointed out by Tarot, globalization, which necessarily encompasses the development of modes of communication, provides an opportunity structure within which transnational activism can emerge. The birth of the Milk Tea Alliance is all possible due to globalization, particularly the advancement of information technology. Although it started as a mere jest social media has turned the alliance into something more emblematic of the collective identity of youth fighting for democracy. This observation is supported by Kamertz when he wrote that social media potentially provides new opportunities for citizens and subordinate groups in society to bypass state and mainstream media to construct alternative collective identities. So we now ask, does transnational activism affect state security? And if yes, how? The study answers this question in the affirmative. First, when we talk about state security, we refer to the power or the ability of state to control its sovereignty and destiny. According to Erdem, transnational activism can change the behavior of nation states. This was seconded by Suhito and Yolestiana when they opined that activists and networks have compulsory power to persuade or even to pressure their target actors. Thus, transnational activism through direct means has the ability to alter, even dictate, security policies and changes in state or region. One concrete example that exemplifies the direct correlation of transnational activism and state security is the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring is a series of pro-democracy uprisings in Tunisia, Algeria, Oman, Jordan, Egypt, Libya, Syria, and Yemen in 2011. During the height of these uprisings, targeted regimes and leaders were forced out of power, thereby obliterating the existing authoritarian governments in the Middle East. This, in turn, transformed the security paradigm of said states and region. The Diplomat, in an online article dated February 16, 2021, called the Milk Tea Alliance as the Southeast Asian Spring, with a warning that governments in Asia Pacific should not be complacent and instead keep a close eye, as it could be sooner rather than later that the movement reaches their shores next. Second, transnational activism affects state security through the so-called boomerang effect. Keck and Shikink wrote that when governments, the primary guarantors of rights, violates or refuses to recognize such rights, individuals and domestic groups often have no recourse within domestic, political, and judicial arenas. They may seek international connections to express their concerns. When channels between states and its domestic actors are blocked, domestic movement bypass their state and directly search out international allies to try to bring pressure on their states from the outside. This boomerang effect, therefore, directly confronts the external sovereignty and security of targeted states. This boomerang effect can be seen in the case of Myanmar. Since the coup led by Tatmadaw started, consistent dissent and public protests have been mounted by various movements, including the Milk Tea Alliance. Youth movements in Southeast Asia has constantly joined the protest, raising their three-hand salute in camaraderie with the activists in Myanmar. Through transnational activism, the issue has gained international visibility. The UN, together with 119 states, expressed their formal condemnation of the military takeover. Furthermore, the European Union, the United Kingdom, and the United States, among others, have imposed sanctions against high-ranking officials of Tatmadaw. While it may be true that such pressure from other states cannot be solely attributed to transnational activism, it cannot be denied that bringing the issue to a wider or relevant audience has triggered greater response from the international community. All these facts and narratives lead us to the following findings and conclusions. First, with the emergence of the Milk Tea Alliance, a transnational movement and transnational relations are created in Southeast Asia. Second, transnational activism through direct and indirect means can affect or influence the power or the ability of state to control its internal or external sovereignty. And finally, the Milk Tea Alliance is an effective channel in formulating public opinion on matters affecting the region. It is also imbued with effective framing strategies in conveying its cause to its members. However, given the state of infancy of the Milk Tea Alliance, expectation as to what it can achieve has to be tempered. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I end my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. The following are my references.